Good morning, everybody. How are you doing today?
Good.
I am a morning person, so I am energetic, so I do walk around. Don't get paranoid if I walk up behind you and keep talking, so just bear with me. But I do have some good information for you. I think one of the things that happens with the juvenile court is that it's kind of like a dark secret out there. People don't know what we do, and they wonder, what are you doing to children? And believe it or not, we do some fantastic things. We're nationally known, and I'm going to give you some information on what the juvenile court is all about. One of the things about the juvenile court, as you know, you have to have jurisdiction in order to work with children, and you're talking about children 18 and under, so that's where our jurisdiction comes from. We advocate for them. That's our primary focus, is to advocate for children who are in need. It could be anything that's happened to them in regards to neglect, abuse. I could go on here. I have a list of things that we cover on a regular basis. One of the things about us in our mission statement, hopefully it'll come up, is that that's the thing that we look for, and that's the one thing that we forget sometimes, is that when these children appear in court, whatever that may look like, dependency, adoptions, one thing is that sometimes there isn't anybody to talk to them, advocate for them. And that's what we're there for. We make sure that we advocate for them so they're treated fair and consistent. One of the things that we like to do, most important part is also, like I said, we're nationally known. We've done some really good work at the juvenile court, and that's one of the things that we really advocate for us and work diligently for us is to, how we change our court is that we're data driven. When you make decisions data-driven, you take the personal part of it out of it, and so you're really making decisions at points where you need to in order to improve the system, make it more efficient, and I think that that's brought a lot of notoriety to our court nationally. So one of the things I want to do is kind of give you some numbers to give you an idea what we basically deal with on a yearly basis. So you're looking at the different years here. So these are our departments that we have at the juvenile court, and I'm going to go over these and kind of give you a broad overview of what that looks like and what we do specifically. But you start looking at like dependency. Look at those numbers. You're looking at 1900 and 2011. You got 1800. Then you go to truancy. You got 1200 students. 1100 the next year. At-risk youth, 95. 121 the next year. Diversion, then you're looking at 2,400, 2,200 violence. Then you look at probation, you're at 1,200, and the next year was another 1,200. Detention, I think this is where you're going to see an alarming number here. I'm going to go over the average daily population to show you the drastic changes that we have made in regards to how you really should utilize detention, especially with juveniles, and we forget that part. And I think that's the most important part, and it's the impact that detention makes on juveniles. It's astronomical, and I'm going to go a little bit on an overview when I get to that section. Then you get into the alternatives to detention, and I think you see those numbers there, and I think that these numbers are going to start growing for us. We're adding more alternatives to detention and just keeping in warehousing kids in detention. So dependency, let's talk about that a little bit. As you saw, the numbers are pretty high. We have a lot of filings, so you've got a lot of children that come to the system, whether they're neglected, abused, they're abandoned. We take these kids on in our county. They're our kids. And it's important for us to make sure that we have people that advocate for these children. And the most important part, and one of the sub-departments to our dependency, is what we call the CASAs. CASAs and GALs are very important to our program. There's so many cases. The most important part about working with children is that you got to pay attention to detail. Somebody's got to be there to know their life, what they're doing, who's taking care of them, are they safe, and that's our job, is to protect these kids. So one of the programs that was started out nationally is a program that CASAs, they work with probation officers. So they take on individual cases and they monitor these cases and provide that additional layer of protection for these kids. And when they are in court, they advocate for them, they know their environment, they know their needs, and make sure that all parties are playing fair. Because bottom line is it's protection for the child. So one of the things, if you look at it, if you look at that number at the top, that's how many volunteers we have there. 230. It fluctuates, but the nice thing about it is that we're able to give these causes special training. Obviously they get backgrounds, but they're out there in the public taking their time to make sure that these kids are getting the services, their needs are being met, and most important, that they're safe. Truancy. This is a program that I used to run. In fact, I just got transferred out a bit ago out of truancy. Truancy, you saw the filings, they're pretty high, and we deal with all the schools in the school districts in the county. One of the things about truancy is that, and then before I leave here, I actually brought a flyer with me to kind of give you an impression and impact of what kids that drop out, kids that don't go to school, the impact on their lives. I'm going to give you this flyer at the end, so I kind of give you an impact and kind of get an idea of what it does really, not only to the individual, what happens to the community and the impact. But the thing about truancy here at the core, the most important part is that every school has an opportunity to file a truancy petition. A truancy petition allows us to, it gives the school leverage to bring that child back to school. After 10 unexcused absences, the school can file a petition with the court. We have the opportunity then to work with the school and the parent and the child. By the time a petition is filed at the court between the child and the family and the school, it usually becomes adversarial. And so that's our role, is to come in, be neutral, listen to their stories, and then we start advocating for one side or the other depending on where the issues lie. The most important part is getting the children back to school, getting them back behind that desk. And I think that we miss that too often. One of the things very controversial at this point is that we talk about dropouts, but something that we forget about is also the kids that are incorrigible at school that get pushed out. Those numbers are drastic. You got a kid that's incorrigible, can't maintain themselves, has behavioral problems, gets suspended and gets pushed out of the school. Sometimes they don't always come back. Kids that drop out don't come back, schools don't look for them, and that is really nationally, that is a huge issue. And only communities can take care of it. And that's one of the things that I really advocate for, is that when it comes to truancy, we deal with it as a community, because there's no way it takes one agency just to get people to come to the table to get these kids back in school. One of the things that we did start at the court was truancy boards. Truancy boards is a really nice option for us, because instead of having the child sit in court in front of a judge, attorneys, and not having really an opportunity to express themselves, the one thing that we've done to change is we're bringing schools to the table, but we're holding an informal court at the school with a child, the parent, the administrators, community members, and probation at the table. It's a great process. Somebody said about hope. Somebody was talking about hope here today. That's the thing, the nice thing about truancy boards, it brings everybody to the table and allows these folks to talk about what can we do. What we talk about is, how do we help you succeed? Instead of hearing the other way around of what they need to fix. So when a child hears, what can we fix? I'm not a car. You don't need to fix me. How about turning that phrase around and saying, what can we do to help you succeed? It's just the way you approach families and schools, be neutral about it, and it's amazing. And then you bring the community members. These kids and volunteers live in the same community. And you got volunteers saying to them, they'll say to them, we need you in school. Because if you're not in school, you're going to have a very difficult time getting a job. You're going to have a very difficult time sustaining yourself. And ultimately, guess who pays for it? And so we're here to help you today to find some solutions and help you succeed. That's a whole different approach, because when you're in court, it becomes the law. It becomes very rigid, and it's about, now I'm ordering you to go to school. I know your issues, but you need to go to school. There's not much flexibility in that. It's just as simple as sometimes sitting at the table with all the players and just talking about simple things. Example, You got kids that have sleeping disorders, they can't get up in the morning. We adjust their schedule. We got children that are homeless, and we talk about McKinney-Vento, which allows school districts to use this avenue to assist kids, irregardless of where they live in the county now, to provide transportation for them to get to school. Just simple little things that we forget to address to get these kids back into school and help them be successful. Let me go back to the other one. Here's another one. Let me see, I can wait too far ahead. I hope I can go back. There we go. So at-risk youth petitions, they're tied into the truancy. When you have at-risk petitions filed, there's usually a parent that has an incorrigible child. Let's say, for example, they have to meet the criteria. And one of the things you think about incorrigible kids are kids that are not coming home. They're using drugs. They're a danger to themselves or the community. And so when parents, I always say this because I meet plenty of kids. My favorite saying to kids is, you're 15, but you're going on 25. They're living that lifestyle. They're 25, and parents are now trying to parent a kid at 15, but his mental age is now at 25 because he knows that it's comfortable leaving the house, couch surfing from house to house, catching up with his friends, using drugs. Some of these kids get to a point where their lifestyle gets so hectic and so dangerous that they become a danger to themselves. They become assaultive towards their families. So this allows the parent to now ask the court for help, and the parents get to drive this. They drive the tool to a point where they can file a petition with the court. The court can take jurisdiction, and then we start talking about house rules, services that they need, and give the parent some leverage in order to hopefully bring this child to a point where they can be productive in our community. That's our whole goal. Doesn't matter whether it's truancy, the criminal system, at-risk youth. What we're looking for is to increase the chances of a child to be productive in our community. And I say increase because not all of them want the help. We do the best we can. We provide hope for them, and we're all striving for the same common goal. How do we help them be productive in our community? Now, there's a very interesting one, which is diversion. That's another department. In fact, I just got transferred out of this unit. So one of the things that we do in diversion, the nice thing about it is that this is what I like about diversion. It keeps kids out of court. And what happens is if a child gets in trouble, it's a misdemeanor. The prosecutor screens the case, finds probable cause, and mandated by law, first one mandatory, it goes to diversion. Diversion means exactly that. You're diverting away from the court. They get an opportunity to handle things out of court, quote, informally through a contract. The nice thing about that is that, once again, it's kind of like truancy board, same concept. What you're doing is and you saw, we had like 2,200 filings both years. That's a lot of filings. There's no way you can take 2,200 filings and try and get them through the juvenile court. We don't have those kind of services or avenues to be able to address all these filings. So what happens is we get that case, and then what we do is turn around and we send these kids over to what we call community accountability. Community accountability boards. So what's really nice about that, do you remember the truancy boards where I said it's a compromise of volunteers from the community, and you have the parent and the child there. That's exactly what it is. The only difference is the school's not there. And the difference here is that now we got a child that's got one foot in the criminal world and one that we're trying to keep out of the court. So we're not trying to entrench kids anymore. We're keeping them out of the courtroom, and now the community. Doesn't that sound like old school? The community's taking care of the child. We're going back that way. It works. I mean, why reinvent the wheel? It's very effective. So now you have a child, let's say for example, went to the mall. How many of you go shopping at the mall? Right? When a child steals something from the mall, does it cost you? What happens?
Prices go up.
Prices go up. So now you got community members that shop in the same community, they got the child and parent in front of them, and that's the conversation they're having with them. Every time you go shoplift, it costs me money because prices go up. What can we do to help you and place you in a position that you don't need to do that? How do we hold you accountable? How do we restore the harm? And that's the most important part. There's a difference between restoring the harm and punishing somebody. I always say this to people when I talk to them, our volunteers, they say, if punishment worked, then why are prisons full? So we had to completely change the way we think, and we had to change our philosophy, and we've gone back to that restorative justice approach. It takes a community. I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, if I did something I wasn't supposed to, my parents weren't home, my neighbor was out the door telling me, That's the approach we've got to come back to. We're headed in that direction, and we're finding that our statistics are a lot better. Because it takes stakeholders in our community to take these children under their wings and help them be productive in our community. Very important. And so that's the nice thing about it is we have community boards in Sumner, Lakewood, University Place, Tacoma, Puyallup. So when kids come from those communities, they're meeting community members that live in their area. They shop at the same places. They buy products in the same area. They live in the same neighborhoods. I don't know about you, but I remember my neighbor, when he told me to do something to stop, I would stop, because then the next thing, if I didn't stop, guess who they go to next? My parents. And if I still didn't stop, who would they go to next? The police. So that's why it's so important to bring back and embrace this community approach. Get the right stakeholders in there. The nice thing about it is it's a contract. They stay out of court, it's not part of their criminal history, and we keep it out of court and they can handle it. If they can handle it and follow their contract, one of the nice things about it, here's a prime example. One of our interventions is doing a work group, and the nice thing about it is people with old-fashioned work group right on the side of the road picking up garbage, right? That's what we see on TV. That's changed, our philosophy has changed drastically to that. We actually have a contract with the city of Tacoma to go out and go to businesses and paint out gang graffiti, clean up the front of businesses. The nice thing about that is business owners come out and thank these kids. They have a conversation. These kids will drive out at least 3 or 4 times a month during the weekends. You hear such great comments. You'll see this child in a van driving through the business. He just painted out some graffiti. You know how fast that graffiti goes back up? They're upset. I just cleaned this building, and now somebody graffitied over this again. What does that tell you? Most important part is that when kids get disengaged from communities, guess what they're doing? They have no respect. With no respect comes what? Vandalism. So when you start looking at how that works and the philosophy of the core and trying to re-engage kids back into the community, that's powerful. Powerful. It takes us a long ways. Probation. This is where I'm at now. This is what I do. These are the kids that have actually committed some serious crimes. Serious crimes such as stealing a car, robberies, using drugs, selling drugs. So now this is at the level that it's gone to a point where the court is involved and there isn't a choice here. One of the things that has changed quite a bit in regards to the court is in order, back in the day when we used to do probation, we wanted to fix everything. Going to school, your drug use, you're not doing your chores, not coming home. But now it's something that's changed drastically for us is that we've gone to what we call the case management. And what we do is we identify the specific reason that child is in the system. How do we do that? We look at the offense. We talk to them and interview them about what triggered them, what were they thinking, what were they feeling. We narrow it down to risk factors to the point, is it aggression? Is it for pleasure? What is it? And we specifically target that risk area, which if you can reduce the risk area, it reduces recidivism. That's how specific it is. And one of the things that you got to remember this, and because we try to fix so many things, we were just average at fixing things. Now we're so specific that we're actually making a difference in reducing recidivism. So one of the things that we do is when you start looking at this, some of the services that we provide, remember that detention number that I told you about that's pretty high? It's reduced quite a bit. And I'm going to show you what the average daily population was back then in regards to adding these services. But if you start looking at this and you start talking about what specifically we target, these are evidence-based programs, best practices. So we're not just brokering out different services to different kids and thinking, hey, yeah, we got it. Or one size fits all. It doesn't always fit for every child. We're very specific here. You got the different programs here in order to help to assist kids, help them be successful. Girls circles on the top left there is a girl-specific gender program, very effective. You got the teen council. Now we're asking kids that were successful on probation to talk to other kids that are on probation on how to just be able to speak with them and help them in regards to navigate through the system. It's already difficult now to make a poor decision, much less now be in the system and try to navigate through it as a child. Then you got the aggression replacement therapy. Remember those kids that I told you that are angry? Sometimes they don't even know they're angry. Once you identify through the risk factor, once you give them feedback and how their decision is affecting them and through their aggression, then we have a great program. We call it ART, which is specific, evidence-based program that targets and helps them with social skills, moral reasoning. Very important. How do you do that? And they do it in front of their peers. They practice their skills in front of their peers. That's huge, huge. Because if they can't do it in front of their peers, you think they're going to be able to go out, you learn a skill, go out now in the community and be able to say no to them. Say you shouldn't do that. Hey, I have a complaint. So we have them practice in front of their peers in a classroom of about 10 of them. Then we have electronic code monitoring. That's just something that gives us something in order to remember the entrenchment. We talk about entrenchment, having kids in detention. Our philosophy has changed. There's only dangerous kids are in detention. So now you're talking the cream of the crop, but you're talking murder, rape, excessive residential burglaries. Well, if you take a low-end offender and you put them in with these kids, guess what they're going to learn to do? I don't know about you, but I would be comfortable if that was my child, low offender, going in and mixing in with these high-risk offenders. So we use these alternatives, electronic code monitoring. We have the weekend alternative detention, which keeps them out of detention. It's kind of like Saturday and Sunday school, and we target the reason that they're there, and once again build skills. We're always building skills. Family functional therapy, this is another evidence-based program, excellent program. You don't have to worry about transportation. You have a therapist, and it's a model, and it works. Doesn't matter where you live. You can live in Buckley, you can live in Tacoma. If you follow the model, it works. And it helps families deal with their internal family functioning. Exceptionally productive program. Arts Connect, that's another girls-specific gender program. And recognition of success. One of the things that happens is these kids come into the system and it's negative. They've made a poor decision. Why not on the other end recognize them? We have a party for them. We have parents there. And we recognize them for making good choices, changing behaviors. For the first time, parents can say, my son graduated from something. They're there taking pictures of each other. That may seem little, but that's big to them. Huge, huge. Detention, I talked a little bit about that. So let me go a little bit forward here. Here, look at our population there. From 2000 to September. You think there's been a couple of changes there? This is what will happen if you change your philosophy, you don't fix everything, you do case management, you identify exactly what the problem or the issue is, and then you provide interventions that are effective. You have quality assurance, you measure those, you make sure that the programs that you use are working. If they're not working, you use the data to make decisions. It's not personal. You know, staff don't want to be told your program is not being effective. Let's switch that around and let's talk about what can we do to make it more effective, or what program is it that we need to bring in-house to make it more effective. What is it that we need to do to bring the community in to help these children? So when you start changing your philosophy, it looks a whole lot different. The interesting part about this, I've got a question to ask you. So when you see the population up that high, and you see it drop so low, what are you thinking? Something's working. But you're also releasing a lot of kids, right? Does that make you a little nervous? God, who are you letting out? Hey, what about my neighborhood? Right? So one of the things that we did, because it was very important, when you have the stakeholders, you have agencies come in, even our own detention staff are saying, what are you guys doing? You're letting kids out. Yeah, we are. Well, why wouldn't you? So one of the things we did along with this is we mapped it out so that this, the crime rate did not change and our population went down. What does that tell you? We were housing the wrong kids. Shame on us. And I can sit here and be proud to say that because now our crime rate has been reduced through a decade. Our detention population is down. That brings a lot of hope. What does that do for our generations down the road? These are some alternative detentions, and I think I already came up with some of those already. Let me. So here's some of, remember what I said, data-driven. How we doing? 5 minutes. I'm getting that 5-minute thing. I'm going to go through this here real quick, and then I'll open it up for some questions. Here's alternatives to detention. This is some of the stuff we started looking at. We started looking at the alternatives to detention, different services, work crew, the weekend. Then we had Girl Circle. We started looking at our bench warrants. What was going on there? How can we increase this so we don't get kids into detention that don't need to be there? We did the same thing with our bench warrants. And then the community detention program. We got a program that actually goes out and monitors kids out in the community where they're on pretrial or probation for a probation violation. And then the last one is home electronic, which I talked about, which gives us a higher level. It's a GPS system. Incredible. It's nice. Kids are able to go home, and they can follow it, and we can follow them to make sure they're compliant. Most important, you got to remember this: when we release kids, we have to make sure that the community is also safe. Very important. Let me open it up for questions. Yes.
What if you have a good kid but a bad situation at home? How do you deal with that?
I always like that. It makes me feel good. I'm sorry, I got a question?
What if you have a good child but a bad situation at home? How do you deal with that?
And it depends on what level he comes into the system. If you look at diversion, it depends how severe you're talking about. If you're talking to a point where there's abuse, neglect, we're mandated. We have to report that to CPS. We know enough that if you start giving your opinion to families, guess what they're going to say? I don't have a problem, where's the door? So what we do is being neutral, we actually start using our interventions with the families. It gives us leverage depending on where you're at. If it's dependency, that's a CPS issue. We're involved in it now. So that's where we start identifying what we need to work on and get services into the family. If they refuse services, it can go to a different level. It just depends on where you are in the system. Dependency, criminals, just different avenues and different forms to provide interventions to families. Remember, you can't fix something until you start raising a level of awareness for folks. It's not an opinion, it's raising a level of awareness.
In one of your circles there's 8 circles around your system.
Yes,
And you use the word therapy in 2 of those.
therapy.
To what extent do you provide mental health services to the youth as well as their families?
So therapy is very important for us. That's a therapeutical. We always look for that word therapeutical. That's very important. Therapeutical, when we use therapeutical interventions, they're more for family function, kids with aggression problems or issues. They don't know how to manage their aggression, so we help them with skills. We're building skills in both the family and the aggression part of it. So we provide the therapy of building skills, but if it's higher than that in regards to mental health, what you're talking about, where you have a diagnosis like bipolar, or you have a diagnosis of schizophrenia, then you got to go to the professionals. We have to be reasonable here. We're limited to a certain point, and those is by our evidence-based programs, but we have to be able to recognize that if they need mental health services, that they're referred to those and they're connected to them.
Where do they go for mental health services?
Oh, you got agencies all over the county. Good Sam, Greater Lakes, in each one of the pockets in the county, there's like 3 or 4 mental health agencies, definitely. In fact, mental health agencies, and great question, by the way, great question, because as a probation department, remember what I said, we're limited in our capacity, and we have to be careful with those boundaries. So one of the things that we have done is that we've actually just hired a new probation officer with a new label of mental health services. It's MSW, and they're connected to the mental health world. They can speak the same language. Probation, for us to try and speak to mental health in their language, or vice versa, it doesn't work too well. So now we have a specific, specialized probation officer that does that with our kids and families. Huge. Have to meet the needs. If you can identify the risk, then you need to identify the need, because you have to respond. If you don't hit that, you miss it, guess what these families are going to continue doing? Same thing over and over again. Cycling in and out, in and out. Any other questions for me? Yes?
How does the marketing work for the community accountability boards? And what are the participation levels like in those?
In the
CABs?
The CABs. And your question is exactly?
Like, what type of participation are you actually seeing in those boards?
By the youth and families?
By the communities themselves.
Oh gosh. I have about 100 volunteers that participate in community boards, and we average 2 or 3 boards at each site, and 3 members per board. Participation is high for us. We could not do what we do unless we have community members. Dependency could not do what they do unless they have volunteers. At 230, they're over double our number in participation. We have volunteers, in fact. I'm impressed. You've been here how long? Some of our volunteers have been there 20 plus years. We have 6 or 7 of them that have been there 30 years. Once we hook you, we got you. Because we're going to engage you. We're going to empower you, and we're going to motivate you, and you're going to bring that energy into a cab. Huge. Who would you rather listen to? A community member or a judge or a police officer? Pick your poison, decide who you want to talk to, and then work with you to sign a contract that's going to work for both of you. Huge. Sure, pass those out. That would be great.
Probably one last question.
Yeah, sometimes you read in the paper, and particularly serious crimes where a juvenile somebody makes a decision to try that juvenile as an adult. Who makes that decision, and what's the criteria rather than be tried in the juvenile system? I mean, how is that decision made?
Wow, great question. There's a lot of controversy behind that right now. They don't believe that children should be in adult court. What you're talking about, your declining jurisdiction to the adult court. There's several criteria. Yeah. It would take me a while to get through that criteria, but you have to meet certain standards, and it starts first of all by the level of the crime that you commit. Like a rob one and you're 16, there is no questions asked. You're pretty much gone. you go to adult court. When you get under 16, then you get into more discretionary. It goes before a judge. You have to support, you got to be fair, the aggravating factors and the mitigating factors. You have to be fair, and that's where the probation department comes in to clearly paint a picture of what this child looks like, and we make a recommendation, and the judge decides all the factors, whatever the parties that have to say, from the prosecutor to the respondent, to the attorney, and then there's a final decision made by the judge. I don't like that process myself, to tell you the truth.
Being tried in the adult court rather than juvenile, I mean, it seems like what you've talked about, there's perhaps more support services available in the juvenile?
Yes, correct.
Is that true?
Yes. The dilemma comes is when you have a 17-year-old that committed murder. You remember that if he stays in the juvenile world, that child is going to get out at 21. He's only doing juvenile life. There's a difference between that and a kid that committed murder at 17 versus a kid that is 17 and goes to the adult world where you're facing harsher penalties. They really need to work on that process. They really do. That's a no-win situation. Nobody wins. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. You have a good one.